And Rob in the afternoon.
Afternoon delight.
With Todd and Rob. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And here we are with the new media show with Todd in the Philippines. And we're on a new streaming setup this time using OBS. So I'm looking at the interwebs and everything looks good. Rob, welcome to the show. Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm looking at the stream and I'm not getting your guys' audio. So let me turn on another audio source. I don't know what happened here. Let me go and unhide. Oh, lovely. There's always something that that happens here, and I don't know why. So let me do this. Unhide all. All right, now let's try. All right, go ahead and talk, Rob.
Yeah. Well, Mark, I know that the Adobe podcast platform has been around for a couple of years now, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of how the whole thing kind of came about at Adobe and what your connection was at the very beginning of this, and kind of then we can dive into the details.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined Adobe in 2018 when a company I had founded called SaySpring was acquired by Adobe.
Mm-hmm.
And SaySpring was a voice design and prototyping platform. So if you're building stuff for voice assistants, which a lot of people were at the time, you needed new design tooling in order to do that. There was a lot of synergies with Adobe. So we had the opportunity to join. I've used Adobe and Macromedia tools my entire career. So I was absolutely thrilled to join the company. And one of the goals of that acquisition was to come up with a broader voice strategy for Adobe. And so kind of the way our team took that is we stepped back and looked at, in a world where there was so much smart audio hardware, right, where everybody was wearing AirPods now, already podcast consumption was, sort of growing rapidly. We looked at sort of what does it take to create good voice content, right? Good spoken audio content. And as we saw in the beginning of this, it's hard. It's hard to get everything set up correctly, especially if you're new to it, right? There's a lot of challenges with it. At the same time, we had an opportunity to meet a lot of the amazing researchers that we have in Adobe Research and see what amazing audio technology they had been incubating and working on themselves. So kind of, I guess it was around 2020, early 2020, we pitched to Scott Belsky, who was Chief Product Officer at the time, let our team kind of roll out and focus on what is an AI-first audio strategy that we could put together that was, based around spoken audio and sort of the mission that we always say is helping people share something as fast as it is to create it, right? So just say something and sort of cut down on the editing process, cut down on a lot of the work that's involved. And so we also, because we had been acquired, we were still a small team of engineers, designers, and a product person. So Adobe and Scott sort of helped us set up as an independent team and basically get started and build what has become Adobe Podcast. It's funny, at first, podcast wasn't thinking about recording. And then the first week that we all worked on it together was March 2020, which was the beginning of the shutdown. And all of a sudden, remote recording became a big requirement. So we sort of built out this platform, started rolling out pieces of it. We were in a private beta, and to get some more people into the private beta, we decided, hey, let's take two of the core AI services that are part of the platform, which is Mic Check, which is sort of an online assistant that helps you set up your mic correctly, make sure the reverb in the room is good for recording. And then Enhanced Speech, which makes spoken audio sound like it was recorded in a studio. And we created these sort of single serve pages. And just the idea was, oh, people can get a little excited by this, join the beta, kind of see everything that we're building. And Enhanced Speech just took off. It was I've been building stuff for 25 years. I've never seen something just virally grow as fast as Enhanced Speech did. It took over TikTok, it took over YouTube really quickly while we were a team of 5 people. Quickly had 1 million users using it. And that just sort of started the journey, kind of then got us, to get some more people to join the team, to build it out and sort of, start what has become the Adobe podcast journey. But yeah, it was sort of humble beginnings of incubating something small that just took off because of sort of the genius of Adobe researchers coming up with Enhanced Speech.
That's kind of that's amazing transition from one thing to a product now that podcasters are using it to record their episodes and do everything that Adobe Podcast or Adobe Podcast Premium, because it's more of a package that
Yeah,
offers.
it was always intended to be an end-to-end platform and
Yeah.
product that helped anyone, sort of record, edit, share spoken audio content podcasts. And then Enhanced Speech just sort of became our wedge to help everybody know what we were up to. And so, Enhanced Speech is still its own tool, is embedded in Adobe Podcast Studio, which is the end-to-end experience. And so, yeah, so now, we have people who do group recording there, do sort of the end-to-end text-based editing. The promise of podcast, the platform, is that you don't need to be an audio expert, that it's easy and accessible to use. We don't even have sort of a multi-track editor. It's all text-based editing. So just way more lightweight than sort of, some of what the other workflows that we see people using out there. So it's also been a fun experience to just learn more about how people are creating these things, finding ways to kind of bring that functionality to people who aren't creating these things yet and are relatively new to it. But also the unique opportunity to do it in a place like Adobe where, we have Audition, we have Premiere.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go sort of pro and high end.
Yeah.
So for the, life of podcast, we'll be able to sort of focus on a certain sort of simplicity that, sort of the product lifestyle always ends up making you drive your product to be a little bit more complex, because that's how you go after bigger customers and, listen to pro users. And so I think the benefit of sort of being at a place like Adobe is you have a bunch of that already. So we can just remain sort of focused on simplicity. And again, a way like in my career, I haven't had the opportunity to do. So it's a fun challenge of not only what do we build to bring to our users, but also like, what don't we have to build? Like, what can we, drive to a different place in Adobe when that's what you're looking for and
Yeah.
that's what you need.
One thing.
Yeah, is this a? Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I have been an Adobe Audition user for, I mean, like probably since I started podcasting in 2004. So whatever version it was then, I can't remember using anything else. I may have used a free product for a few episodes, but I was like, I need it. And I, to be honest with you, I don't use 95% of the things in Audition that is available. I use a few of the tools. So for me, it's like it's completely overkill. It's an overkill product for me. And then, when I see Adobe Podcast, I kind of giggle a little bit because it really gives me everything that all I use in Adobe Audition. So, you're cutting, the leveling that's available, just a few things. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm paying for an Adobe. Of course, I use Premiere too, so I need Premiere. So I'm like, wow, maybe I could lower my bill a little bit. But for a new podcaster, this is one of the reasons why Blueberry did it. The relationship and opened up this ability for Blueberry podcasters to get, a 60-day free trial is we wanted podcasters to understand that they they don't need a high-end product like Edition or Hindenburg or some of these other products are out there to get started. You get started, get your feet wet, and then maybe you graduate into Edition. And I think too, a lot of times, new content creators are very, very intimidated by the editing process, and maybe they don't have a budget for an editor. So the text-based editing to me was like it's no more complicated than really, um, editing a doc file. You kind of scrub
Yeah.
what you want, you
Yeah, or
delete
a
it. It's
transcript,
yeah,
right?
it's easy.
And you're really editing a transcript is what you're doing.
Yeah, it's very, very, very easy to utilize. And, I'm hoping from this, what you guys are doing, obviously you're going to be improving your product over time. But I love the simplicity at this point. And I guess, from my standpoint is, you guys are obviously using some AI, I'm assuming, in the tool, or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, there's several different pieces of AI that sort of power things, right? I mean, obviously, like the transcription that also powers it is AI. But then we also do some smart things just under the hood, right? That aren't necessarily AI, but to just help make edits sound more natural and actually, when you cut out a word, actually finding the right place to sort of make it as seamless as it can be when you use a text-based editor. Again, enhanced speech is a core part of the recording and editing experience.
Right.
It was funny. We did we looked into how many people are exporting something out of Adobe Podcast without turning on enhanced speech, and it's like 3%.
Wow.
Like everybody who uses that tool uses enhanced speech to make it sound great. And so, because we were like, oh, this is an opportunity to share this feature users might not know about, and it's not on by default. But that's, I think that the ability to just sound professional, right, and have your content sound professional grade, I think it's a really hard problem to solve, both technically and from a user experience perspective. But again, like that's the thing that our team just kind of is obsessed with and focused on is how do we continue to just keep that simple and make it so anyone can use it. If you go to Twitter and look at or a social media platform and look at Adobe Podcast, you're going to see lots of teachers posting stuff of kids K-12 who are using it, who are creating podcasts for the first time. So it sort of has that level of ease, but can create sort of professional grade stuff. So yeah, it's been a super fun product to work on.
One thing that I was also, we talked to a number of folks, and I think the thing that really set me apart and why we wanted to, to align was that you guys are a monster. You're a big company, and this is what Adobe does. This is the lifeblood of the company. Audio, video, graphics, all the things. All the tools that everyone's familiar with.
All the
So
creative tools, right?
yeah, all the creative tools and the creative suites. So for me, it just made sense because I'm thinking, you've had this powerhouse name that is they already know core audio. This is, I don't know how many total years Adobe has done audio, but it's or processed audio, or going all the way back to Audition and all the other video editing tools. But I just knew that over time that you probably your internal roadmap just as the product is just going to get better. So for me, the understanding is I can be guaranteed this product's going to be around tomorrow. It's going to continue to um, improve over time, and obviously there's some integration now with some of the other products. So I'm pretty jazzed with the product overall. I don't know, Rob, you want to jump in here? I'm hogging up the mic.
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting for a company like Adobe to be moving into this direction of like a single use kind of tool, right? I mean, it's an entry level kind of use case, but on the other hand, it may be a way for you guys to develop AI capability that is appealing, right, in a single use case that then can be attractive, that maybe will help a consumer transition over to using like a full product. Or is the company, do you think, Mark, looking at this from, these type of products like you've created within the Adobe podcast area, that is kind of more of a glimpse of the future, right? As you think about AI and AI agents and things like that, because I can see where those three tools that you've built in Adobe Podcast so far are very much kind of aligned with each other from a functional standpoint. So I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on that as you look to the future of AI agents and how that plays a role in what you're doing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's sort of two pieces to it, right? So you were first sort of talking about, as people are getting used to new tooling and are new to different workflows. I mean, you see the same thing in other parts of the Adobe business too, right? So we have Adobe Express, which is our graphics and video platform that sits alongside our pro level tools. Sort of the same idea. Either you don't need the powerhouse of Photoshop to make certain graphics, and Express is exactly what you need. You're new to graphic design overall, and that's the right tool for you. You're an EDU, that's the right tool for you. And so I think in order to, our vision of creativity for all, I think that part of that is making easier to use tools for those kinds of users, right? And so I think podcast is that for audio. But I think you're seeing that across the company, right? I also think that you're seeing sort of across the digital landscape, just the power of design and design becoming a more and more important part of all kinds of work and content creation, right? Of marketing, of sort of what we have traditionally called, knowledge work. I think design is a more and more important part of all of that. And so again, that sort of brings a whole different type of user to it. When it comes to AI, I think one of the benefits of AI, at least the way we've approached it in podcast, is we very intentionally sort of looked at what is sort of the end-to-end workflow of creating audio content. What are all the things that either take time or take a high level of skill in order to complete? And then how can we use AI just to start chipping away at all those workflows, right? So, or just build it in a way that AI is not as important, but still chips away at that part, right? So I would say the first is mic check, making sure you're starting with a good recording, super important part of it. When you record in podcast, we're also recording locally on your machine and then sort of feeding that recording up into the system. So the audio that you have isn't the conversation the two people had with each other in real time, right? It's the local recording, so it's much higher quality. Most of our users have no idea that that happened, but it just ends with really good sounding audio, right? Then you have AI to transcribe it and give you a transcript to edit with. You have AI and enhanced speech to be able to make it sound good, right? And all the next things that are going to come from Adobe Podcast are, how do we cut down on the editing process? How do we do, automated filler word removal? How do we help you find the best clips to share on social, right? Like throw captions on those things, like all of the things that you then need to share that work with other people, right? I think AI has a place to fit in all of those things. And one of the things that I find sort of exciting and rewarding about what the way we focused on it is none of this is sort of like replacing creativity, right? It's like accelerating creativity. I think that, when we look at some of the other things that are out there, people keep asking me like, are podcasts going away? Like, can't we just do like text to speech? Like, can't you just have a robot write a book? Can't you just have a robot create an image? Like, I think that there will always, there'll be a subset of work that I think, AI might fill in. But I don't think creativity could be replaced, human creativity. And so I think when you can use AI to accelerate that process, I think that becomes super exciting, right? And it gets more people to be able to share more stories with more people out there in more ways, which, to me is kind of the whole point.
On the enhancement of the audio process, obviously you all have perfected on the software side. I mean, there is you go into effects and Audition, and you can really manipulate the audio in a big way. So, on the enhancement of the audio, did use the knowledge of, okay, we need to know to set this, and this. You had specific. I guess a better question is, was there set algorithms that was gained from knowledge on the core software product, or was this a brand new effort on the enhancement of the audio? Or did you know that, hey, we need to touch this piece, this, and this, and we kind of know the algorithms already, that's generally good? And so I guess maybe the question is you had to sample the audio first to know what to change. That had to be relatively complex, I would think. Am I wrong on that, or what was that process?
So, yeah, so it is a completely different approach to enhancing audio. And again, this was, developed within Adobe Research. We have some brilliant PhDs there. And it was funny when I first heard about enhanced speech. I don't know if we ever shared this, but the researcher called it Awesomizer. And so the Awesomizer, when I first saw it and I was enthralled by it, I talked to research, and there was at that time no plan to put it in a product.
Oh.
And one of the reasons for that was when people were talking to customers, no customer was asking for it. Like, no customer was asking for just an AI magical switch that just makes it sound better. But it's also because customers didn't necessarily know that you could just do that and like it would work well. And so, we brought it to market because of that. But the way it actually works, and I am not a PhD, so I'll give you my dumb guy version of this. So what it actually does is, it was because, one of the benefits of Adobe is Adobe Research was able to get a big proprietary set of training data that was all people in studios speaking. So to basically train a service to say, this is what it sounds, these are the audio characteristics of spoken audio when they're recorded in a professional studio. And then what happens is when somebody uploads audio, it looks at that audio and it just says, if that audio was recorded in a professional studio, what do I think its audio characteristics would look like? And then it just generates a new version of it, essentially. And so it doesn't generate voices. And it's kind of a black box, everyone. So we have a slider that kind of lets you mix it back with the original and stuff, but that's kind of all it's doing, because like you get basically one result out of it. It's not it's all based on audio, so it's language agnostic. It doesn't know what anyone's saying in it. It doesn't know what language is in it. And sometimes you'll get weird artifacts in it. Like some of them might sound like they have a lisp, but it's actually because it's like cutting off a little bit of the audio because there was a loud reverb and it doesn't know what to do in that section. So it's kind of guessing. And so that's what it does. It basically extracts out the spoken audio from the background and says, this is what I think it would look like, sound like, if it had been recorded in a studio. So wildly different approach to audio, and very much based on like image generation. Like it's, sort of looking at like the spectral representation of that audio and then extracting it out.
You should call it magic mastering or something like that instead of.
I know. Well, the audio people will tell you it's not really
taken,
mastering. It doesn't really master, right? But yeah, I mean, it is wild. And so we actually, I think we started chatting around November. That's when we launched V2. And so what V2 does now is also it separates out the background. and then takes just the isolated speech, then enhances that, then gives you two sliders back that says, let me slide the speech between being isolated versus enhanced, and how much of the background do I want in? So now there's like another AI service called SoundLift that's embedded in it that does the source separation and actually pulls the voices out above the background, but then kind of lets you mix the background back in.
See, Rob, this is why, you know, there's other companies out there, but they don't have PhDs working in a research lab coming up with this kind of stuff.
Well, I wanted to ask you too. I mean, it's very much tangential to this. Is are we getting to a point with this technology of noise reduction and background sound removal that the the whole need that creators need to be worried about of having a really high quality microphone are slowly starting to disappear? So, like Todd and I have these very expensive microphones. Are we quickly coming to a time when the quality of the microphone is somewhat irrelevant to getting studio quality audio?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't think quite irrelevant, because I think the better audio you start with,
Okay,
the
it's
better something like enhanced speech
quality in,
works,
quality
right?
out,
So
kind of, right?
yeah, so it's not an accident that we also launched a mic check service at the same time to like, hey, start with the best possible recording you can have.
Mhm.
However, kind of one of the things that we always describe is enhanced speech is excellent at intentionally recorded audio.
Mhm.
So if if you're like recording outside in the world, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the environment, that can be harder to work with,
Yep.
and sort of any AI, you
Yeah.
may have some artifacts, right? Some effect to it. But if you can like sit in a room, even with like a MacBook laptop mic, and you can like look at it the right way and then speak to it specifically, enhanced speech and AI services in general will do like a great job with that. So I think we're getting to a point where, not that the microphone is irrelevant, but you don't need it, right? And it becomes much more accessible. So if you're, a teenager in Brazil using an Android device, if you take that Android device and you like put it on your desk, and it's as quiet as you can make the room, even though it might be reverby because you have tile floors and whatnot, but you intentionally record it that way, it will come out great. It will come out professional quality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or even like a iPhone kind of cable microphone, that kind of thing. It usually does a
Yeah.
pretty good job, right? And so I just wonder if these really, really high end microphones are really going to be unnecessary.
I think for the average
Versus,
creator, we're already seeing that,
yeah, it's like,
you
these
know,
$50 mics
yeah.
will suffice if you're using a sound optimization type of a tool like what you guys are offering. They may not have to
Yeah.
invest $600 into a Shure SM7B. So this is what I'm saying.
So absolutely on that part,
Yeah,
I think that, again, as long as you have a mic
a
that
mic, right? Yeah.
right, a mic that is like set up and you're specifically recording into.
Yeah.
I also think, so we haven't released it in any way, but on fast enough hardware, enhanced speech works in real time. And so I think it's only a matter of time before, not only is this just like a post-production process,
It's
Oh,
built
but
into
just
everything.
audio always sounds good, right? Every
Yeah.
phone call eventually will just sound like it's coming from a professional studio,
yeah.
right? So I think just the world of, you give it 10 years, I think the world of bad audio will kind of go away.
Well, I think one example is as like a Rodecaster mixer has built-in, noise reduction and all these kind of filters, dynamic range enhancement, and all sorts of things that you can turn off and on in the software. Do you see at some point a tool like yours being built into hardware too?
So that's my dream. I mean, it's, not really Adobe business.
To be built
Yeah.
into the microphone, right? Yeah.
I mean, I mean, we also, on the Firefly side, Adobe Firefly, which is a host of AI services we have,
Yeah.
we've just also launched the ability to translate content, in the speaker's original voice.
Yeah.
I think that it's inevitable that we will have a TV that will play any movie ever made in a voice that mimics, the talent on screen, that makes it sound good if it's noisy. I think like so much of this right now is at the point of creation and post-production. I think it's not too far until it's all in the world of like consumption and listening.
Yeah.
Right. And then you
makes
can just
sense.
do it to anything ever. It doesn't matter what it was. The creator didn't need to do it. The listener can.
It's
You know-
funny because at home, same microphone. I have an $800 preamp that it's attached to. It goes through an old traditional rack system with an EQ, a compeller, a compressor. It has I have an Aphex big bottom, and I've got that thing dialed in to exactly where I want it. I've got sound panels, and so the sound is good. But here I am, 8,000 miles away from that studio, and I'm in a Rodecaster right now. And guess what? It's got the big bottom built in from Aphex into the actual software panel that this thing offers. So I would imagine if I went and did an A/B test on how I sound right now raw compared to what I sound like raw at home, there's probably not too much of a delta. There'll be nuances of it. At the
Mhm.
same time, if I was to switch the microphone out to an Audio Technica ATR 2100, there would be a nuance in the tone. But again, I think in the end, with what you guys are doing here, the
It shouldn't
that
matter.
shouldn't matter as long, again, of course, if you have a Blue Yeti and you're talking into the top of it, well, then we can't fix that because they're not talking into the diaphragm. They're using it incorrectly. So even here, Rob and I talking a little bit off axis, the mic will support it, but if I was directly into it all the time, it would be better. So there's certain things you can't fix. Background noise, those types of things that happen are still going to show up. I remember in Honolulu, in my office studio, I had wall units for air conditioning, and there was no way I could run that while recording. So I opened the windows to get air, and of course, if someone started a blower across the street, a leaf blower, then it completely jacked my recording. But still, in the end, um, the product came out really nice. So I think that we're living in an age right now where there's a lot of forgiveness on the input. Of course, if it's bad, it's bad. We've all heard unrecoverable audio before. Part of our challenge at doing live events was it took us a number of attempts to finally get to the point where we could get the the roar of a background in a trade show down to the point where we actually could, there was just a muffle of that sound. It's really hard. And people, I think today more than ever, and you tie video component into this, if the audio is good, sounds good, they will stick with you much longer than they will if the audio is bad. Because people would be very annoyed by it. I think about the early days when we were encoding in 16K. That audio was pretty tinny. And but again, that's what we had to do in those early days.
Yeah. I think bad audio kills content, right? I think especially, any of us who were listening to the podcast in 2020 when everyone needed to start recording remotely and we're using Teams and Zoom and weren't really ready for it. You listen to some of those podcasts, like they're you can't listen to them, right? Like podcasts I remember religiously listening to and then hearing sort of that level of quality. It kills the experience. On the flip side, I also think as creators, there's a tendency to get obsessed with quality.
Oh, yeah.
And to think, that better is just, better is better. And it's, everything needs to be in 4K, now I need to, my phone can record 8K. And so everything needs to be in 8K.
Yeah.
And, people are listening to content on AirPods in the subway and, kind of putting it on while they're driving. So I think that, I think there's sort of and not formally defined, but I think there's sort of like a base level of quality that if you are below it, your content's dead, that you need to be above. But then I think sort of at the top, there's a little bit diminishing returns, So I think that, you know, the we always call it the knobs and sliders. Like, can we just give people a toggle that you can just turn it on, and I promise you it's going to sound good enough.
Yeah.
Like 98% of people will like it. I think there's also, it's funny, even as I work with the audio research team. I mean, that team, those ears are all so finely tuned. They can listen to something and point out all the problems with it. And just like no one is ever going to hear that in a million years. Like no one is ever going to notice that. Right. It's the same thing when I think a lot of people, test like whether or not they can create a voice model of their own voice. And then they hear it and like, that doesn't sound like me. Well, it's like, it sounds like you to other people. It just doesn't sound like you to you. So I think that also understanding like who the audience is and kind of what you're planning to do with this content is a super important part of like creating good stuff and not just getting obsessed with like better and better.
There's a good friend of mine. I haven't heard from him in a number of years, but his name is Paul Figiani, and he was involved in some of the early days working with some pioneers in the podcasting space, coming up with audio processing.
Audio engineer.
Yeah,
right?
he's an audio engineer, and Paul was a fan of the show, and he was like constantly, and he finally heard one day that I was using Audition, and like 3 days later, he emailed me like 3 files, says, you need to put these in, this filter, this filter, this filter, you need to use this in post-processing. And to be honest with you, I could barely tell the difference, but Paul had an ear that was just, and some people have it. It's just like wine. Wine to me is wine. I don't taste the difference. I might know the difference between a Merlot or or Cab, but that's
good wine and bad wine.
Right.
But
they taste
diminishing
good.
returns up at the top.
Right. So, and I think other people, and there's also, I've been in events where, you go in and there's a, you have the hardcore audiophile that is, they got the $5,000 amplifier and they're wearing, the $2,000 headphones and they're immersed. And I'm thinking, yeah, but like I said, most of us are just listening to music on AirPods. So, and again, obviously the quality on them have improved over the years, but it is. I think there is a fine
Still
line.
lower quality, right?
Yeah, for
Still
sure.
lower.
And do you really need to
it's funny
have that deep on spoken word?
Yeah, and just and knowing sort of also what you're trying to accomplish and what story you're trying to tell, right?
Yeah.
Like you brought up sort of the roar of a trade show,
Yeah.
Or a conference floor. When we first sort of had released Enhanced Speech, we had a bunch of example videos that were recorded at Adobe Max, which is our big conference, and so it's on the studio floor.
Yeah.
And you toggle it on and it sounds super clean, like it was recorded in a studio.
Wow.
But when you look at it, you're like, it's like uncanny valley. You're like, well, you need the background noise. I see that person is not in a studio, right? So you kind of like need some of that background noise, which is what led to us kind of adding that stuff. So, also again, sort of like understanding what it is you're trying to get across to the listener is an important part of the process.
But at the same time, I've been in some events where I've been holding a microphone and a person that kept moving off axis and they're driving you crazy and you have a huge number of people. So sometimes you just need to get the stuff isolated so you can hear it. And obviously Rob and I are in controlled environments and most podcasters are as well. But then again, there's podcasters that are doing, podcasts in bars and, so you want a little bit of that, like you said, that background ambience. They're not drinking beer in this sterile environment or doing shots or whatever they may be doing. So, yeah, so it's nice that you've added that. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of expand on this topic too, because I've done some videos that I've run through the audio optimization processes for the videos, and the videos were like filmed either in my car while I'm driving or something like that. And it's maybe and it plays into exactly like what you guys were saying, is that sometimes the expectation of the audio quality doesn't match with what the actual audio quality is. And that's what it gets into this conversation around, well, if I'm doing a recording in my car while I'm driving, and people are seeing a video, but they can hear me talking at the same time, and the audio sounds like I'm speaking into an SM7B. That there's kind of like maybe a disconnect there from the standpoint of, well, his audio shouldn't sound that good
But
being
it's
there.
cool that
Yeah,
it does.
absolutely.
Right. So I've had that experience too, and it's great. I can listen to my video and I can say, well, that audio sounds terrific, but it does seem a little odd to have that quality of audio in the car while you're driving. So anyway, and I've worked with these tools for a while now down this path of the record anywhere, and you just run it through this algorithm and it cleans it up and makes it sound perfect, and which is great for a lot of situations that you can get into. But I also know that your platform on your premium plan is now working with video too. So you're doing that same thing where you're processing a video, but you're fixing the audio in the video and making it better. Is that
Yeah.
right?
So
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's funny, especially at Adobe too, right? People tend to think audio and video, but yeah, audio is a very important part of video,
Right.
right? And so, when we first launched Enhanced Speech, people were yelling at us like, this needs to support video. I use it for a lot of video. And big spoiler, we're going to be bringing video to our recording. We're going to be bringing video to our editing. Because it's just what we hear from people. That's kind of what
Sure.
they need.
That's the hot thing now, right, Mark?
Yeah, it's funny too. So we're researching it a lot around like recording too. And kind of what we're learning is, so, we do like the local recording of audio right now when you record an Adobe podcast. To do that for video is, a big technical challenge. It's solvable, but it's a big
Sure.
investment. But so we've been analyzing, well, could we just do cloud recording of video, but the local audio? Like, are people as particular about the video quality as they are about the audio quality? And as we talk to users, like, it turns out that for stuff like what we're doing, right, like talking head videos, podcasts, the audio is actually way more important than the video. That people are pretty forgiving of a couple artifacts on a talking head video or two people having a conversation if the audio sounds good. And so it kind of becomes this flip of when it is audio first content or videos, the audio needs to be better than the video because you can't do it the other way. So it's just interesting to kind of learn what people actually enjoy consuming and listening to.
So I was using a variety of tools to do this show from here. When I'm home, I have a very high-end system. I have a TriCaster. It's completely overkill, but I get incredibly good video captures, and the audio chain's really, really good as well. But when I came to this type of situation, which is more like most content creators are doing now that are on the podcasting side and having the video portion, my challenge really was I was getting one or the other. I was getting either great video or I was getting great audio. And I wasn't really getting both with some of the tools that are out there. And it was really driving me insane. So this is one of the reasons why I've changed up what we're doing when I'm in this location and how I'm recording. I'm recording just so everybody knows, I'm using Zoom, but that's not where the master recording's happening for the video. The master recording's happening in OBS now. But I am doing a backup recording in Zoom in case something goes sideways, which is, backup. But I would not use the Zoom video that is, because it can get weird. It can get pixelated if someone's connection's a little bit better. And it could happen here too. But I think your idea of if you can have it so that you record both the video and audio locally and upload, even if the person has to wait until a little bit of time after the live event, that to me is the best solution for getting both a good quality audio recording and video. Because if I say something and my connection goes a little bit sideways, the computer will catch it. The live will suck, but the master will still be good because we still have the master recording, and same thing on each of your screens. I think that is the way to really get that well. Now, sure, you can build a cool interface similar to Riverside or StreamYard, but again, I tried both of those tools, and they have their own limitations. StreamYard's cloud recording sucks; it's horrible. Where Riverside has great video recording, but the studio tools weren't that good. So I think if you can get a combination of both, you'll knock it out of the ballpark. You'll compete heavily in that regard.
Yeah, so we haven't made decisions on exactly how we'll roll it out. But I will say that in the kinds of it's hard to fill gaps in audio, right? When recording.
Right.
It's not that hard to record gaps in video.
That's true.
If you have jaggies, right? If you have a stutter, that's where I think there's a role for AI to be able to like fill those gaps and make it sound good, right? So that won't work on a motion picture you're editing in Premiere, maybe.
Right.
But it definitely works for sort of the kinds of stuff that people would be creating and working on in Adobe Podcast, right? So again, I think that, we kind of always joke about like, what's enhanced video going to look like, right? To sit alongside enhanced speech. What is enhanced music going to sound like? So I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of solve some of those problems because, yeah, local recording might be great, but also, if you're that Brazilian teenager on a low power Android device, that can't hold the whole thing, right? The memory on that can't hold that local recording. So there's a big opportunity for, with the distribution and the reach that Adobe has to make something that is like super accessible to a whole bunch of storytellers that, have a lot of trouble creating those kinds of pieces of content now.
It's just
I think it's all a balance and we'll figure it out.
It's just like right now, I've got a light adjusted wrong, so I'm getting a little reflection in my glass, and it's driving me absolutely crazy. I can't fix that. It's there. It's going to live. I can fix it after I get done and adjust the light. But I can't. Well, you said maybe you can fix it, but right now, it's doing live. There's no way to fix it.
Yeah, live is definitely trickier.
Right.
I will also say, I had a call earlier today, just as the sun was going down, and I noticed the reflection of the screen in my glasses. So 20 minutes before I joined this call, I put my contacts in so that I wouldn't have this when I talk to you both.
Yeah, and
So there's still things you're going to need to do to make the content better.
Yeah, I would love to be able to actually do my show entirely with a lavalier, but the problem with the lavalier, it just doesn't have the same kind of quality. So I've got a little lavalier, and a lot of people now are just doing videos now, holding their little tiny microphone in front of their mouths now, more and more. That's been the hot thing to do. But that's kind of what I'm talking about as far as being able to do this with just a small mic that you maybe put on your lapel or something like that. It could be wireless. It could be anything like that. And we could actually just get rid of these things, right? And take them out of the picture. And I think it would improve the quality of the video too. So we don't have that big hardware right in our faces. So I was just trying to show that.
Absolutely. It's funny. As a product creator, it's really easy to fall into the trap of like having a narrative in your head about like who the users are and who the people are using your tool and kind of what they have at their disposal.
Right.
And when you do it right and you talk to a lot of people, you learn a bunch of things you would have never realized or thought. I was talking to a correspondent who works for the BBC, and they were telling me about, when they have correspondents all over the world, the different regions that they're in bring different audio challenges, right? So you're in the Middle East. There's a lot of marble there, a lot of reverb in the interior spaces where you tend to record.
Right.
Brazil, Latin America is similar. There's a lot of, tile everywhere because of the climate. In India, a lot of spaces are very small. And so again, a lot of reverb. I talked to somebody who made education content, and they had a creator in Africa, and they would record outside at night because that's when it was the quietest, but there were crickets in the background.
Right.
And so like the crickets were always in all the content. It's always something. And so you
Right.
just, you start to
Right.
realize that, hey, even if you can get the fancy mic, a lot of even if you're a professional, even if you're, a BBC journalist, you're going to be in places where you're still going to have challenges, right? And so again, I think that's, to me, the perfect place that like AI can help create, or help people create content that would be hard to create otherwise. We also always hear the word save. It is so common that somebody goes to record something with somebody and the lavalier isn't turned on or wired correctly. And the only audio they have is the mic audio from the camera.
Yeah, we've all done that.
And so that's what
once or twice.
that's what they're stuck with. But yeah, you can enhance it and you can still use it. I won't name them, but there are several big name podcasters who have been saved by enhanced speech plenty of times because of hardware setups and, glitches that happen throughout the show.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's kind of funny because you guys may saw me moving around here. I figured out where the glare was coming from. It was coming from the notes that Rob had sent over. That white screen was enough to cause the glare. Wasn't the light at all. It's an interesting time now with so many people trying so many different things. When it comes to audio, and you look at TikTok and some of those. Believe it or not, some of the audio on TikTok is pretty bad. Because they just this is where they're they're trying to record into a ring light, and maybe they have a mic, maybe they don't. But I think there's lots of opportunities out there, and I'm kind of excited. So on Adobe Podcast Premium, it ties in Adobe Express. How are you seeing that utilization? Are the people using the Adobe Podcast product and then they're going straight into Express, or what does the usage look like between those two products?
Yeah, so far what we see is sort of maybe adjacent workflows or like people supporting kind of one way or another. So a hobbyist who uses Adobe Express to make videos and graphics to support their Etsy business decides to record voiceovers in podcast or make a podcast about their hobby. We also see sort of the other way around, right? So people who record something and then you need cover art. So cover art in Adobe Express is a great place to do that. There's a captions tool within Adobe Express. And so, I think over time, you'll see us do a better job of sort of integrating workflows across the two tools. But one thing that we've noticed sort of more broadly, just in the creative ecosystem is, you sort of mentioned TikTok. Like there's a new generation of creator who is used to not having end-to-end workflows, who is used to using 3 or 4 tools to do each one of those tasks.
Right.
So
Right.
they record somewhere, they edit somewhere, they use this tool to like create all the clips that they put on social, they use this tool to add the captions to them. And so, I think that our first point is to help expose the people who are using podcasts to the things that Express can do for them, even if, I think same thing. Like I think we can get obsessed at Adobe with like, it needs to be that you can like easily just transfer the project over here and keep working on it. But I think the starting point is also just the education of just like making sure that, people know everything that they have available to them. And, I'm a little biased, but for $9.99 a month to have all of podcasts and all of Adobe Express available to you. Yes, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And if you do an A/B comparison for people that are listening or watching this, and I think it's important to watch budget for creators, because what we see is usually the hosting part of the bill is the least expensive part of their entire budget. They're spending X number of dollars for an AI tool. They're spending X number of dollars for an editor. They're spending X number of dollars for maybe a headline or a Canva or whatever it may be. And the next thing you know, they've got $100 wrapped up in additional charges per month, whereas that doesn't have to be the case. And I'm pretty, I raised 5 kids, so and I was living in Hawaii at the time, so I was super budget conscious, um, and because we had to make the dollars go a long ways, so in order to reduce spend and have a product that is just as good, to me is important. So that's why I applaud you guys on that $9.99 price point. And I think that's where people should really maybe their eyeballs open up here a little bit, in thinking about this. If you're starting to be, especially with the economy the way it is right now, be budget conscious. Um, and I'll be honest with you, I can draw stick figures. You know, I could barely find my way around. When it came to editing stuff in Photoshop or whatever years we go, it's just like I would screw things up more than I would fix things. So for me, a tool that is simple, templated, and gives me what I need, maybe isn't a masterpiece if I was an expert in all those other tools, but you can get pretty doggone good and something that looks really super professional, at $9.99 a month. I think for me, that's the thing that makes me say, wow,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the product challenge for us too. You mentioned earlier that you use 10-15% of any given tool, and I think with Pro Tools that's definitely the case. But I think that's the case with most software. Just everyone kind of uses a different 10 or 15%.
That's right.
So our game is sort of, can we, across all the things you need to do to create this stuff,
Yeah.
can we have a good opinion on like what we believe the most important 10 or 15% of functionality across all those kinds of tools are, and then give just that to people, right? At like an accessible price point to help them create whatever it is they need to create, right? So it's we all spend a ton of time. Everyone on our team has a pretty big background in just tooling, and so we all are very opinionated on kind of what how do we deliver on that promise? And again, knowing that we'll always be able to maintain a certain level of simplicity because we have the pro grade tools. A lot of our tools are fighter jets, right? It's like getting in the cockpit of a fighter jet when you open Photoshop.
Yeah.
It is an amazing piece of technology, right? It has created, countless, important works that are, a part of our culture. But there's a learning curve.
And
how do we
I'm just putting
find that right 10 or 15%?
And I'm just putting text on an AI generated image, so I'm using 0.001% of Photoshop's ability where it can be done in Express, and so
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a fun challenge as being somebody who builds products.
Yeah.
So this topic is really interesting because I was watching a panel of AI kind of experts and where they were seeing the tooling that would be driven by AI as you look to the future. And this one person I was hearing talk up on stage on a panel was from Hollywood, right? Was from the movie industry. And so what he was doing was trying to create AI tools that matched with the expectations of the studios and how they like to produce movies, right? So, there's separate steps that go into every movie production, right? And if you apply AI tools to do some part of each step of this, that will fit in better with the human workflow process. Or are we doing this really because we're trying to fit in with the human workflow process, but eventually we will come around to maybe not having so many steps and trying to connect those steps together. Is there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's funny. We have this debate all the time on our team too, because I am very aware, as somebody who's in their mid 40s and has been using creative tools forever, that I just have a certain way of working, right?
Yeah.
I almost never drag files. I'm a file picker guy. We've had big debates where our experienced designer is like, I drag and drop everything onto the canvas. I was like, I don't think I ever do that. I always go to file, click import, right?
I'm a picker too. Apple I.
Yeah, totally. I think, right. So I think that there's parts where I don't want to be too much the generational guy, but I think like there are just when people are new to a workflow, there's an opportunity to like kind of rethink what it is, right? And so I think when you see, you know, Hollywood studios and the way they create stuff, and then opportunities for AI to accelerate that workflow, that's obviously a huge opportunity. But then you see, you know, movies with a $6 million budget clean the award shows that was edited in Premiere, right? You know, last
Sure.
year the editing award went to you know, another film that was also edited in Premiere. Those creators are going to have like completely different workflows and different ways of thinking about this, and they're now going to, you know, sort of rise up in the industry, and they'll all be, you know, having huge productions at some point in their career. And so I think like it will also change, right? And so I also think there's an opportunity for sort of these like, it's an overused term, but like AI first, right? Of like,
Right.
there's just going to be opportunities to go record a bunch of stuff out there and just make it sound all as good as it can sound, and then start there, and you don't have to worry about making sure that you're lugging around all this audio equipment. I think we're gonna have the same thing for video, right? I think like there's going to be ways to kind of iterate much faster on like what shots look like that an individual does in a tool like Premiere, right? Versus sort of more of a Hollywood studio kind of workflow. So I think you're going to have both, right? And I also think one of the things that I'm super excited about is because of the nature of AI, it gets trained on what has happened in the past, right? And
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen is certain AI outputs are going to then just seem like they're AI. So even if they're not, right? Like I think that, you know, when you look at something like Notebook LM, right? And like this, like it's very sort of, you know, NPR style conversational podcast of two people
Right.
in a studio.
Yeah.
Even if you now have two people in a studio, I think people are going to start to think some of that sounds like Notebook LM and be like, oh, this is AI. So I think people are going to start creating like different approaches to stuff and different formats. Like to me, almost like the Notebook
Breaks the
LM, and not to
mold
pick on that tool.
of AI.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
It's breaking the mold, right? I think that, you know, AI generated images that are sort of like fantastical and have a lot of like light blues and light pinks in them, and that everybody kind of is, it looks like AI now.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to have, that sounds like AI. That kind of looks like AI video. And so I think you're actually going to have a whole bunch of people doing new stuff. You know, this whole like, I think AI avatars and the social media videos, all that tooling is going to make all of that stuff look like it's AI generated, which is going to make people create something completely different. Right. And so I think it is going to like, I think people are going to just continue to break the mold. And so I think social media content will look different. Podcasts will sound different. Movies will start to look different because everything is, you know, a whole bunch of things are going to start to feel like AI, and people are going to want to break that mold.
You know, I think
So I think that's kind of what I think is super exciting about where we're headed with this.
if we take
Do you see Adobe playing a role in that?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think Adobe can play a bunch of roles. You know, I think Adobe can definitely play the role of there's a Hollywood end-to-end workflow, and we can help make it more efficient in a bunch of places. I think we're going to have a bunch of tools that let anybody create really professional looking content. And then I think, you know, back to kind of where we started, we're going to have the tools that people are going to help break the mold with. One of my favorite things is, I guess Illustrator now is, I don't know, 34 years old, 35 years old. When Illustrator first came out, its tagline was, "We don't even know everything it can do for you." And like that to me is just like the guiding light of a creative tool of just like, I don't even know what people are going to do with this stuff. When we launched Enhanced Speech, people started taking it and like adding the artifacts to ambient music and like EDM. Because like they actually like the roboticness of like the service getting something wrong. And so they like mixed it into a whole bunch of tracks. So there's a whole bunch of weird stuff like people will create and break the mold. And so I think Adobe can sort of play a role in all of it, which is, you know, again, not to drink the Kool-Aid too much, but it's a super fun business to be part of.
But if we bring it back down to basics, I'll be kind of frank, especially for new creators. This is the people that I'm worried about the most, is they get really overwhelmed. We're talking a lot of real cool stuff here, but I think what I've seen, and at least my mindset is when it comes to Adobe Podcast and Adobe Premiere, um, and excuse me, Adobe Express, is the ability for someone that, again, is getting started, they're new, they're going to get in, they're going to record their podcast, they have a simple editing tool, they got this great way to get enhanced audio out, and it's a process that doesn't take a lot of time. A lot of content creators today get so far in the weeds. Oh, I edit for 4 hours on my show. If I had to edit for 4 hours, I would have quit 19 years ago. I just couldn't have done it. So we want people to focus on the content, allow the tools to, get them to the point where they've got a great sounding podcast without having to spend 5 hours editing something and they get wrapped around the axle. Let them get 5 years into the content or 3 years into the content before they get completely wrapped around the axle and doing 3 hours of editing, or have someone to hire that does that editing. I think there's got to be a point in the beginning. And I think the thing I always tell content creators, just hit record. Let's get it recorded. Do minor editing. Let's get it out the door. The product's going to change. Your 10th episode's not going to sound like your first, and so on and so forth. And I think this was my major appeal with Adobe Podcast, was that it wasn't overwhelming. I took a new gal that we had working for us, said, hey, do a demo video real quick. Just go in, figure out how to use Adobe Podcast. And she's like, well, that's easy. And I think that's the key. It's real easy, and you get a great product.
Yeah, I think getting, it's like how to write a great novel, right? You just write the first page and get started. So I think that, we need to make it as easy as possible for people to create stuff. Again, I also think that the tools and simplicity sometimes changes the form, right? Like, I think now when you watch a lot of YouTube videos, you'll see a lot of jump cuts because a lot of people do text-based editing.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just become part of the format. And I think everyone's okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think that, you kind of get started and you start and even back to some of the AI stuff, I think the new creative journey is usually about mimicry. It's usually about sort of wanting to create something that seems like the thing that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Lin-Manuel Miranda tells a great story of the first time he ever went to go see a live musical was Rent. And he's like, and I immediately came back and wrote a whole bunch of things that sounded exactly like Rent. All right. And then you sort of find your own voice. And so I think that easily accessible tools and AI help people start the creative journey. And usually that's going to be mimicry of some sense, right? Of seeing the kinds of videos they see on YouTube, the kinds of podcasts that they listen to, and get started there. And then hopefully, instead of 3 or 4 years down the road where they get obsessed with the craft of editing, maybe they get obsessed with the craft of creation. And because the editing is so much easier, they can just push themselves and try different things, right? And once you can create content much faster, you can just try a lot of different stuff. And so I think that's, again, sort of what is, I think, exciting about this whole AI revolution, if we want to call it that, is I think it's going to make it so much easier for anyone to create stuff. And then I think it's going to make it so much easier to break the mold and bring out new stuff no one has seen or thought about before.
You talked a little bit about the Ellen Notes. I think that's what it was, right? The
Notebook LM?
Yeah. And, I could see right now you can hear that audio and just know immediately where it came from. But what I would foresee happening with that product is they may dumb it down a little bit to make the voices make a mistake. And you'd be like, okay, the AI would not normally make a mistake. Was that an AI or was it not? So I
thought it's just a setting that you have to do.
Yeah.
More human-like errors.
Yeah. Have a sneeze in there or a cough or something like that, or too many ahs and ums. Have that typical thing that we have with. But again, at what point? Just like you guys and some of the tools that you've created is, I record my voice for 3 hours or whatever it requires to train a product. And the next thing I know, I'm speaking French on some.
I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic about this kind of stuff. I think when you create this kind of AI content, um, I think you should not try and like mimic that they're humans, right? I think that falls apart fast, right? So again, like even now when you listen to it and it's, you know, kind of been in the public consciousness for what, 6 months, it has a sound, right? And so I think that nobody wants to listen to AI that they think are humans, but and I think some of the conversational artifacts that they put in there with the ums and the ahs, I actually think that goes away, because what I want out of a tool like that is like, I want to dump like all my educational content into it. And then I want to like listen to that from when I walk to class, right? Or like when I'm driving, to like be able to consume information in a more efficient way or a more enjoyable way. So I think that that's where that stuff goes, right? And then I think that, again, the human beings are going to lean into creating stuff that feels very different and authentic. And I think that we may be in this middle ground where people are trying to get away with AI avatars that people think are humans and stuff. But I think like as we all kind of get exposed to it, I actually don't think that's what people want, right? I think it's attractive because of like, oh, content production costs cut down so much, and you know, but I think that stuff gets relegated to online learning and you know, the training materials that we have to watch all the time working in a big company. And then I think on the sort of social media side, there's a place for it, but I think it changes. And I think like, again, 5-10 years from now, I don't think mimicking, you know, AI mimicking humans is kind of where sort of entertainment plays itself out.
I definitely hope it gets separate out and marked. That's something that's important to me, is to have it marked so that, you know, now I can tell, like I watch a YouTube video and it's, you know, it's that voice you hear every time. I immediately back out. I think we're all going to be seeking original voices. I think it's going to become more important as time goes on. So podcasters, YouTubers, anyone that's creating original content, I think people are going to seek that out, because, like you said, I agree with you too. The AI stuff should be relegated to, you know, the 1 hour training content you have to listen to every quarter or whatever it is from your company. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe.
But I think if I had the option to, you know, watch shows from another country in another language that I couldn't watch otherwise, or like I love watching, you know, cricket highlights that aren't in English, and now I can listen. So I think that, and like, I'll know it's an AI voice. I'm totally fine with
And
that,
I'm good
right?
with that too.
But it now makes it more accessible. I think, again, like, I think this like makes the world sort of more fluid and accessible, and kind of open stuff up to other people in a way that, you know, wouldn't happen without AI, versus, you know, people trying to use AI to just kind of get one over on you and pretend it's a human being.
There was a time when I was watching some foreign films, or Italian specific, kind of these dark dramas that came out of Italy for a while, and of course it was all subtitled. I would have loved to been able to hear that in English, you know. So I think
right.
There's a place.
There's some stuff that will get a budget that they can, you know, localize across different languages, but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't. And so if you can use AI to build audiences, and, you know, again, and I think, and going the other way too, you know, again, I think we always, in a lot of these conversations, we think about like English centric, and then being able to like put it in other languages so people in other countries can listen to our stuff, but the other way around, right? Like, again, there's tons of creators in Brazil and India and, you know, Mexico, Turkey, who could, you know, which are, by the way, like the 4 countries that are the biggest for Adobe Podcast after the US, that can create a bunch of stuff that is then in English. And then not only can English audiences appreciate it, but then you can also run English ads against it, so those creators can, you know, make better ad rates, like a whole bunch of kind of stuff that just like changes, I think, what the sort of online economy around content creation and viewing looks like.
And there's a series of Portuguese podcasts they get massive numbers, 1 million listeners per episode, designed for factory workers. And I've always wanted to listen to one of those shows and to understand what are they saying to keep these people listening 3 hours to a 3-hour program every day. You can hear the excitement in the voice, but I don't speak Portuguese, so I kind of have to wonder, you know, does it have comedy? Is it, you know? And again, so I think there'll be the ability then to learn from other content creators and learn new ideas from different countries too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And then every country has their version of the podcast for factory workers that is based on sort of, I mean, we see it with television all the time, right?
Yeah.
There's, America's Got Talent is in every country in every language. And so I think you're going to see that down the stack at the podcast level, as kind of this stuff becomes more prevalent.
Rob, you got any more questions for Mark before we let Mark go?
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about something too. Something that I've seen happen a lot with video on YouTube lately is these compilation videos, right? Where people are pulling real world video from libraries and then tying them together with a story of sorts, right? That changes and transitions and things like that. And so I think those videos I've seen that actually are real human characters in there, but maybe an AI voice or a compilation that is generated by AI of human voices that are actually talking about a specific topic and how AI can kind of like mix and match and create something new out of something that's pre-existing or that already has been produced by a big creator or something like that is what I'm seeing. Like I've got up on my screen right now a video that's doing the exact same thing as that. It's got 100,000 views or that kind of thing. So I think that there is kind of AI generated content that will drive audience. It's just, what's the topic, what's the relevance of the topic, and how trusted is the source for that, and how good is it produced is going to be the other element here. And is some of those video and some of that audio AI generated or not? So I think that there may be a hybrid of what we're talking about here, which is the combination of AI plus human creators kind of collaborating together to create content. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think, I think the AI workflows we was going to talk about with this human in the loop, right? Where there's like a human who's part of it. I think again is, super necessary. And I think these kinds of tools like are going to open up new kinds of content that wouldn't have been made otherwise. I do also think that it's going to also lead to a lot of slop, right? There's going to be just a lot of
That's
slop
the
out
new
there.
term now, slop, right? Yeah.
It is.
AI slop.
I remember, so my daughter is now 11, and I remember when she was, I don't know, 3, we made the mistake of putting on YouTube. It was the first time she ever watched it, and it was some like animated little, nursery rhyme video. And then like 2 videos in, there was just like a creepy version of that kind of thing with like an obvious like synthetic voice singing a song and just obvious like bad 3D graphics. And I was just like, ugh. And so that was the beginning and the end of her YouTube watching career. So there's also going to be a lot of that, right? Because for a lot of the possibility of making one of those videos that gets 100,000 views, a lot of that's going to come from making like 1 million of them. Right. And so there's just going to be a lot of stuff out there that is also completely unwatchable.
I call it the new form of spam. That's what it really is. It's video spam. Video
companies
slop.
are going to be using this technology to produce promo videos for all sorts of different things, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is also, I don't know, I guess this is also just the nature of media and the nature of creation, right? I mean, this is, there's always gatekeepers who own the studios, who were in charge, owned all that actors and actresses, right? And kind of then TV, then cable, like it always goes down, right? And so I think that we're definitely living in a world of like abundance when it comes to content. And I think, a mix of the platforms and audiences and people kind of just continue to sift through it. So there's always a learning curve. There's going to be a lot of slop out there for a while, but I don't know. I think we're going to get better, new, original sort of stories and things that we've never seen before sort of come out the other side of this.
Well, it's definitely going to be an exciting time for sure. And, any projections then on Adobe Podcasts and Adobe Express, excuse me, Again, for some reason I keep going back to Premiere.
That's all
What
right.
it's looking like for the
It's still
next
good.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the two big focuses we have is, I think video is going to become a bigger and bigger part of the workflows and the platform itself. And then back to sort of the way I had described our AI vision of just like, let's look at all these things that take a lot of time, either setting up or in the editing process. And how can we use AI to solve that for people and make it much easier? So, people have that across a whole bunch of different things when it comes to creating clips, enhancing video, right? Making it look good, solving dropouts. So I think that, we'll continue to collaborate with Adobe Research pretty tightly and making sure that, we can just help people create great stuff without needing to be a pro or have tons of time or big budgets to get that stuff done.
Awesome. Rob, you have anything else for
Yeah, I was
Mark?
just going to ask. Let's talk about kind of how a person would sign up and what they would get as part of. It looks like that there's two plans. There's a free plan and then there's a premium plan. If you could talk a little bit about the free plan and what people get with that and how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty affordable and open platform in general. So it's a freemium product, right? So there is a free version that can be free forever that you can use, and then there's a premium version if you upgrade, and even that has a 30-day trial on it. So the free version, you can unlimited record, but exporting up to 30 minutes, up to 2 projects a day. On enhanced speech, you can enhance up to an hour's worth of stuff every day for free. If you record in studio, you can enhance it there. If you have something you've already recorded, a piece of audio, you can upload it. And then premium is really about sort of almost like how much time do you have? There's a lot of stuff you can do in the free version if you have a lot of time on your hands. But if you need to work faster, get stuff out quicker, that's where in premium we have additional sliders. We have video support, so you can upload a video directly, not just the audio like you can in free. Unlimited recording, unlimited exports. We launched something called Audiogram. So if you have a piece of audio, you can share that on social. It creates a video with the animated transcript. And then of course the $9.99 plan also comes with Adobe Express, and Adobe Express Premium has hundreds of thousands of templates for logos, for graphics, a video editor, motion graphics. I mean, pretty much, and you could build an end-to-end marketing department with podcast and Express for what you get for $9.99. So it's a pretty solid deal that I feel pretty good about.
So is the service based on a browser usage model, or is there an app associated with it?
Yeah, so it's actually all browser based. Yeah, so it's all based on the
Okay.
web. So Express as well. Express has a mobile app you can download, but the rest of the Express experience is on the web. So yeah, there's no software to download, and so it's sort of really easy to use. The whole recording and editing experience for podcasts lives on the desktop browser, but you can use enhanced speech to take any video off your phone, make it sound really good. If you have premium. So yeah, it's a mix of capabilities that, again, sort of, I think because of the way we launched this, everything that we've added has been based on listening to users and what they need and learning how they were using it. And then how we've decided to charge for it was, you get an hour free of enhanced speech every day, and you can come back every day and get another hour. 30 hours a month for free. It's a pretty good starting point.
It is.
But people who are, again, sort of, I think working intentionally and have things they need to get done, I think premium is kind of the place for them.
And for
Sure.
$9.99 a month, come on, it's the best deal. It's a fantastic deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Can't beat it.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to thank you for coming on. Is there? I don't want you to necessarily give your email, but is there a good way to reach the Adobe podcast team, or is anything, or just contact?
Yeah, so you can, Yeah, podcast.adobe.com is where the app is located. There's a contact section there, but anyone can always email us at teampodcasts@adobe.com.
Awesome.
And we read and look at every email that we ever get. So feel free to
Awesome.
reach out.
Hey, thank you for being with us late tonight. We definitely appreciate it, and much success. And we'll check back in a year and see where the product is, and look
Please
forward
do.
to the additional enhancements.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, appreciate the conversation, guys.
Hey, thank you so
All
much.
right, Mark. Thank you.
So, Rob, any specific news that we have seen that we need to cover before we bust out of here today?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I think there's only like 5 minutes left, so I don't think we have enough to go too deep on anything.
All right.
So
I guess
we
what
can just call it a day here.
yeah, I guess what we'll do is yeah. So everyone, thanks for tuning in today. And here, I got this on the screen. I think I do. Let me move this over here. Getting used to this. So, yeah, I'm fumbling. Sorry.
Okay. Well, the only thing that's been bubbling is this whole discussion about Spotify and
Oh,
and
yeah.
video.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
can
it just
spend some discussion on that
keeps
next week for sure.
keeps spinning up there, and there's a lot of this is a pretty important topic for the podcast landscape. So
Yeah. And if you don't
it
know what
seems
we're referring
getting
to, there's a article in Pod News that links to a LinkedIn article that has gotten a lot of attention today.
yeah. Yeah, and it's all about, the issues that we've been talking about in this show for, I don't know, probably a good close to a year now, probably, about how Spotify is allowing people to upload video to replace their audio. And
Peop-
that's,
and some people losing money.
yeah. So,
Yeah. Which,
yeah.
And I've had some conversations with people off the record that don't want to go on the record, that are, heavily concerned about this particular issue. So, but anyway,
And I saw that,
Go ahead.
yeah, and I saw that the Evergreen Podcast Network launched an experience on Roku on the video side.
Oh, really?
So,
So
yeah.
people are back to building Roku apps. That's funny.
Well, I know you spent a lot of years doing that too in the
Yeah.
early years
Yeah,
of
we were
podcasting. So
we were app 12, 13, and 14 on the Roku. So third party app.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny how we're coming full circle again.
here
Here
we
he is.
are. The whole video thing is really becoming something, and I don't think we've seen the end of this either. I think it's going to continue to spin.
Yeah. Alrighty,
So,
everybody. I'm Todd at blueberry.com. I'm at Geek News on X. I'm at Geek News at geeknews.chat. Rob?
I'm on X at Rob Greenlee, on YouTube at Rob Greenlee, on Facebook at Rob Greenlee. And so I'm easy to find on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to send me an email, you're certainly welcome to send it to robgreenlee@gmail.com, and that'll get to me. So
I don't have our AI disclosure, but just raw here, any AI tool can use and index our content here and use for your training models. We authorize you to do that. So
awesome.
I think pretty good run on this first try here, and going to make a few tweaks next week. But otherwise,
Yeah, I think it went smooth.
Yeah, I think it went smooth. We'll see how the recording turned out. Little bump at the beginning with audio. I need to check that out, but I fixed it really quickly. So I've got backup upon backup of recording today. So we got a good capture one way or the other. So, but anyway, thanks for being with me, Rob, and we'll see you a week from today.
Okay, sounds great.